Well, awesome, Tayson. Thank you for hopping on the call with me, even though I had a little whoopsie mountain biking. Um, for those who may not be familiar with you and your company, if you just want to do just a quick introduction of who you are and what you guys do.
Yeah, my name is Tayson Whittaker, and I founded Outdoor Vitals. Outdoor Vitals is a ultralight backpacking gear company that really focuses on performance first gear, and then we sell it direct to consumer. So we cut out the middleman and the retail stores while we do that. But yeah, so I've been doing that for 10 years now. This is our 10-year anniversary year, I guess you could say. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So what was the first ever Outdoor Vitals product? I don't think I know that.
Yeah, so our first ever product was a down sleeping bag. I mean, I had always been interested in business, but I wanted to tie business with my passions and things like that. And so I did like test out a few different products in the very beginning, just trying to get to cash, but really the one that right out of the gate I was interested in and the one that stuck around was the down sleeping bag and making that more affordable by selling it direct to consumer. So we had at the time and looking back now, I'd call it very much a budget down sleeping bag in terms of quality, but we were selling that thing for 99 bucks. And that really kicked us, out the door and started, brought in cash so that then we could start working on bigger, better designs and building out the team. But yeah, I started with the sleeping bag because also like growing up, I grew up like a Boy Scout. My family, I live in Southern Utah, so I was always out camping and stuff. And I just froze. It didn't matter if it was the middle of the summer or what. I was always cold. Part of that was like me not knowing the right things to stay warm. I mean, the amount of nights I slept on like a cot with no pad underneath me or things like that, right? But that was always a big thing. And then when it came to me starting to get into backpacking, the sleeping bag was just my sleeping bag that I had prior to that was so massive it was just impossible to backpack with. So when I started to look at pricing on like nicer sleeping bags, even like a Kelty Cosmic or something like that, I was like, man, that's expensive for me at the time as a brand new consumer, as a kid in college, And so I just saw it as a big opportunity to be like, if I sell this direct to consumer and I cut out all these extra costs that get added into a product cost, what could I do? And so yeah, that's what we had. We had a $99 down sleeping bag that crushed it and was at that point in time, because I didn't have a warehouse yet, I didn't have a team yet. It was Amazon's number one best-selling down sleeping bag on Amazon, and that's really what kicked us off.
Wow, that's pretty solid. So I know I just got a quilt from you guys, and it came with like your lookbook and all the different products that you guys have. How? I mean, I is it safe to say that you guys have grown pretty rapidly?
Yeah, yeah, we've had massive, growth years. We've had other years where, we're navigating changes and things too. Because the truth is, when I started this company, I was actually 23 years old, and I had a lot to learn myself still, right? And so, and even what I thought was good product back then, now I look at and it's like, man, it's a whole different volume, whole different level. But I was always operating to the best of my knowledge and abilities. And so for those first 4 or 5 years, we had tremendous value offers, but it really wasn't what I wanted long term. So around 2018, we launched a Kickstarter because we're self. I mean, I'm the only owner of the business. There's no additional partners, no additional equity, anything like that. And so we used Kickstarter at that point in time to help us grow and fund inventory. And we launched a jacket called the Loft Tech jacket. It raised $1 million on Kickstarter, and that kicked us. That kicked off what we always call Outdoor Vitals 2.0, because I went and took that success, and in 2019 I got in with still our suppliers today, but some of the best fabric suppliers in the world, some of the best cut and sew shops in the world, some of the best backpack manufacturers in the world, some of the best wool providers in the world, because they could all see this third party success we've had. They see the way that we're doing it. They learn a little bit about the brand, and thankfully every one of them said, "Yeah, we'll work with you." And so between that and bringing on our designer that we've had ever since then, so that I wasn't also designing the goods, and running the other parts of the business, that really kicked things off. So years obviously of like redesigning and improving product. About 2021 and on is when the outside world started to see the amount of products we had to offer, but also the quality level just really started to shoot up around 2019 it started to go up, but like by 2021, I would say everyone was realizing the differences in what we built. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long story, right? Of like starting in 2014 to now. But it's really cool to be like, man, we got to where we positioned the brand now where I always wanted it to be. But as a 23-year-old kid with no funding, no relationships, things like that, it took some years to build up to that point.
Wow. I mean, raising $1 million on Kickstarter, like that doesn't happen by accident. And I'm curious. I mean, there's a lot of companies in the outdoor industry. There's a lot of different products. What do you think it is, or a mixture of different things that has helped really, boost the Outdoor Vitals brand image? Help you raise that $1 million. Like, what is it, if you can pinpoint, about Outdoor Vitals that's helping with that success?
Yeah, I mean, specific, I guess, to that Kickstarter, I would say I always kind of operated under that mindset of if you do the same thing, you get the same result. And so it was always, how can we do things more different? And from day one, we always wanted to have a personal touch to the brand. So you can still go back and find videos of me sitting at like a little tiny coffee table. I'm sitting on a 5-gallon bucket in front of drapes in front of a window, and I'm filming videos, right? Because what I wanted to build was a company that we could operate like a bigger operation, a big corporate operation where we have, the ability to manufacture in the best facilities and the ability to get pricing, really competitively and things like that. But I wanted people to still feel like it was a mom and pop shop in terms of they know who's behind the brand, they know our values. And so we always, did things a little bit different where like we were doing videos out of the gate. So when it came to Kickstarter, we'd had years of experience of creating videos. And also like I had spent a lot of my time, say after graduating high school till starting the business, studying things like marketing and copy. I mean, at 18, I went and did door-to-door sales to try to learn how to talk to people, because I was such an introvert, right? I was like, I didn't date anyone in high school. I was just like such an introvert. And so I tried to force myself out of that bubble and learn sales and marketing. And so really what I think it is we just had a really compelling story in a way that we did business. And then we coupled that with a really good product. I mean, at that point in time, that product was exceptional in terms of a loose fill synthetic. And I had tested everything I could get my hands on from Primaloft and some of these other guys. And this little niche company that actually made machines, they had made this machine to build this insulation. And instead of selling the insulation to Primaloft, let's say, they decided to sell that insulation. And so it was a really impressive insulation. We were the first to market with it. And, it kicked off a really cool story and a really cool product story. And between all of that, it just came together for us on that particular product.
No, that's awesome, man. I really, I think the story does so much to help, not just sell a product, but like the brand as well. Because as a consumer, you do have basically like infinite options. But when you are, met with this, compelling story and a reason behind like who the brand is and what they do, it's like you're buying into that just as much as you are the product. And I think, now when, that you have this large product line, it's like you do have this one, through factor, the brand that helps to sell, everything else. I'm curious, as both an adventurer and business owner, are there products that like you really want to make, but from the business side of things, you're like, oh, that doesn't really make sense. Like that's not going to sell.
Yeah, there's definitely times that things like that come up. In fact, I've got a sample sitting right here that there's no way that we'll bring that product to market, but or testing the idea of using different fabrics in different areas and just to see like what happens with it. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely been things like that have come up over the years. As we've gotten bigger and bigger, though, a lot of those, like our product line is kind of rounded out, and so there's a lot less of them than there used to be. But yeah, in the beginning, I wanted to do everything. Right, I wanted to have everything, and thankfully, as we've chipped away at it over years, I have a little bit less, I would say, of that. But there's times when it's like, I'm doing a bunch of running. Why don't we have a running vest? Let's build a running vest, or different things, like that. And it definitely happens. And sometimes we'll create a prototype just to put extra miles in it. And that's what's kind of cool, I guess, about being in the position that we've built for ourselves now is, at any given time, we can have 15 to 20 samples of different products that we're testing. And some of them, may never see the light of day. Some of them we're like, hey, we're happy if this makes it to market in 3 years. And then other of them, it's like, no, let's try to get this to market next year. And so all different timelines and different things there, but it's fun to be able to at least, build products to test and mess around with, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Before we move on to some more fun adventure-oriented stuff, if there was one thing that you wish consumers would understand about operating a business, like what would that be? It's like I've had an e-commerce business and I've just fielded questions before, like, man, I wish you would like make it in this color. Like, yeah, like you don't actually, that's so complicated to do because now we got to buy 30,000 yards of this one fabric and we only do 1,000 yards right now. If there is something that, you wish your average consumer understood about what it actually takes to bring this stuff to life, like what would it be?
Yeah, I would say the two things that come top of mind for me. One is like the true cost of shipping and returns. I think because there's certain brands out there that have, everything's free to ship, it's 2-day shipping and returns are free and all that. Like they've built their business with that as the strong selling point, right? But if your business, if you're like, like our strong selling point is the product, right? Like we want to put all of our money into the product to deliver the best possible product we can. But you like still have to meet this threshold that's set by a different company because that's their priority. And so I think sometimes people are like, they don't understand the cost of shipping, the fact that shipping costs continue to rise constantly. And then just like the cost of exchanges, someone's got to like repackage it, relook at it, make sure nothing's damaged and stuff. So I think sometimes people, they get in that mindset of like, I'm going to buy 5 things and return 4 of them to figure out what I want. Now, I'm not unhappy with the way that we have to do business. We're an online business. People have to do exchanges. They have to get stuff. That's a part of it. I just think that people, they probably like misunderstand with some of the policies out there that it's a cost and like, it's helpful to us if you put, a little bit of time into like selecting the right, like trying to pick the right thing in the beginning. But so I think that's one thing, right? Is when they're like, wait, this is like my 3rd return. Why is the shipping not free still to return this? Or, but the other one is like women's products. We'd love to have grow our women's line of products. And we get asked that question a lot. And that's a really tough one because we do have a handful of products in women's cuts and women's fits. And the numbers just don't lie, I guess. Like we just don't sell as many. And so there's a lot of times where people are like, well, maybe if you had them, you'd sell more. And so we've tested that. We've rolled it out on certain product lines and it really just doesn't bump it a lot. And the numbers for us are really dominant towards men. And so I hate that. But as a smaller brand, we can't put hundreds of thousands of dollars into growing the women's line without getting returns back. So we're kind of like slowly chipping away at growing the women's side of things. But I think that we have some women that are customers that have probably been so for years. Are like, man, like, why is it not there yet? Why is it not, and it's like, yeah, it's complicated. Every product, every colorway is hundreds and hundreds of units, if not thousands. So every time you add additional product to a PO, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars minimum, depending on the product. And then you look at that across an entire line of products, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's all for a subset of group that, unfortunately, at this point, are not buying as much from us. And so it's a tough one. We continue to chip away at it, but it's like a tough one for people that have followed us a while or women that follow us a while to like wrap their heads around sometimes. And I get it. It would be frustrating.
Yeah. No, I think that was really well said. And yeah, it's complicated. It's nuanced, and I feel like we're at a place in society right now where there's like not really a ton of room for nuance. It's like either this or it's that, and it's just not the case. So yeah, I think that was well said. So I'm really curious with the ultralight movement. I would say the last many years, the ultralight movement is kind of moving like full steam ahead. Even like a lot of larger brands are getting on board. Like Mystery Ranch has ultralight backpacks right now, which like blew my mind. I'm really curious from a company that's at the tip of the spear. Really, do you think how much in the future will ultralight be more about the product and like material advancement versus this is more like of a for lack of a better term, like lifestyle thing? Like you can go a lot lighter by just packing less instead of buying the absolute lightest everything out there. So I'm curious, yeah, where you see the ultralight movement going.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because there has been material advancements. There will continue to be material advancements, and so I think that's always going to be working. But I do think we've seen that pendulum swing, and we've seen it swing so far that you get to the point of maybe diminishing returns, or you start to alienate certain demographic of like, that's, I can't trust that product. Right? Like, so for us, we don't try to be the very tip of the spear in terms of the absolute lightest product. We more so take it down just a notch and then try to build in like as much performance as we can to that. And a good example of that would be our Tushar rain jacket. So our Tushar rain jacket, we tested a lot of different components in it, and one of them was a 7 denier face fabric, because some of our competitors make a 7 denier face fabric rain jacket. Well, our designer, who's a very meticulous, careful person, took that out of the box and went to zip it up, and the zipper caught the fabric and ripped the hole straight in the fabric. But this is in our office still, hasn't even seen the light of day outside the office. And it was like, yep, 7 deniers off the table for us. Like, it's not worth it when you're talking about like the difference between being wet and dry, and the backcountry can be the difference between life and death, between hypothermia and not, And so what we like to do is we like to see what we can offer at certain weight categories. So for our rain jacket, it is a 7-ounce rain jacket, which is still really very centered in that ultralight category. It's not maybe a 5-ounce or 6-ounce one, but it's a 7-ounce. It has pit zips on it, chest pocket, but it has a 20 denier face fabric. And the way we were able to pull that off is by actually doing a 3D print on the inside of the jacket to create that 2.5 layer, to hold it off your skin and allow that vapor moisture to transfer out of the jacket. And that 3D print, we were the first to bring that to market. And the reason we were the first to bring it to market is we were the only ones that could really justify spending that much money to do the 3D print. That technology had been developed by our partners, Toray, and been pitched to much bigger brands. And they're like, we don't have room for a $400 rain jacket on a store shelf, so we're not going to do it, right? But as a direct consumer brand, we could. So for us, to pull that back, for us, we want to make stuff as light as we can, but we have to field test it and we have to have confidence in it, because I do think it can sometimes go a hair too far. To the point of the mindset, though, I couldn't agree more. In fact, our mascot is an owl, right? Our logo is an owl, and owls are known to be a symbol of wisdom across the world, right? And there's lots of reasons for why people think that. Obviously, like the Greek goddess of Athena used an owl, but the idea of wisdom and ultralight backpacking go hand in hand for me, because like you said, you can get way light by just eliminating things. Well, how do you get the confidence to eliminate things? It's through experience, right? And experience and knowledge create wisdom. And so the idea with a lot of that is that some of the best ways to lighten your pack and become a true ultralight backpacker is through building wisdom, which is gaining experience and gaining that knowledge. It's not just about the product itself. And the other part of why, you know, we selected an owl is the logo was, I think we're also changing to where people are watching videos like this because they want to know about the product. They want to be their own guru on the subject, not just go into, say, REI and have someone pick and hand them gear and say, all right, trust me, this is the right stuff. It's like, no, they want to know, they want to build confidence, they want to build wisdom. But to us, to be a true ultralight backpacker, you're developing this experience, this knowledge, this wisdom. And once you start to develop that, from what I've seen, you start to apply that into all parts of life. So for me personally, over the last 10 years, I've become way more of a minimalist in my personal life, in all of these other areas of my life, just because as I start to see the beauty and the benefits of simplicity, I've started to like see how that's snuck into the rest of my life. I mean, I was raised by someone who wasn't a hoarder, but getting my dad to throw things away was extremely, extremely difficult, right? And so that was kind of my default programming. But as I've continued to ultralight backpack, I've also continued to simplify all these other parts of my life.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's, and I think too, like a lot of the places that you want to go with an ultralight setup, I mean, they require planning and attention, and you know, to be approached in a thoughtful manner. Like for me, I will always add weight, or maybe not add, but like I'm willing to accept a certain level of excess weight on some items in my pack. Like, you know, my tent, my shelter is always like, yeah, would I like the lightest tent possible? Like, yeah, I would, but would I like it to withstand 50-mile-an-hour driving, you know, wind and rain? Like, yeah, I would like that too.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. And that's kind of where like the performance side of our brand comes in, is like between me and my designer, we spend a lot of time outdoors, and some of our favorite places to go is as high up as we can. And when you get up on some of these peaks and, you know, you're camping in some of these draws at 11, 12,000 feet, and I mean, you are going to get bad weather. You're going to get snowed on in the summer. You're going to get crazy thunderstorms that roll in with crazy amounts of wind, and you want to have complete confidence in your gear. And yeah, there's certain fabrics, or to go with even tents, that I've tested and that didn't leave me confident at all, or didn't, you know, whether it be the fabrics they use being too fragile, whether it be Skyline placement, whether it be other things. But if you're not feeling confident, then you're less likely to go out, right? And so for us, it's all about trying to generate confidence. A lot of that is the gear, and some of that is the knowledge too, right? So like, you know, educating people is a huge reason why they don't go out. If there's all these unknowns around backpacking or ultralight backpacking, then they're not going to go, because there's too many unknowns, too many fears, right? So it's both sides, and so you have to take what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, you know, I think what you just said about educating people. This is, so you guys are very close to Zion National Park, right? You're like right on one of the entrances. I'm really curious, as outdoor recreation really explodes in popularity, like how we reach people who aren't even in that network of the outdoors. Like, I feel like you need to like have Leave No Trace and like McDonald's partner, because like you do see all these people who, you know, and I want to be delicate with how I say it, but like, you know, maybe they're visiting Zion for the first time and they're going there because they saw you know, the local news or in a magazine, like, hey, 10 best hikes that like you have to do when you're going to Zion. But like that's their whole exposure to anything with the outdoors, is that they, you know, saw this thing or they saw this photo, and now they're going to go and they have no idea how would it be safe, through no fault of their own. They're not in that community. I mean, like, what do you think is the best way for those people to get educated on how to stay safe? Because I mean, it is dangerous. It's, you know, national parks are not amusement parks. And I don't know if I have an answer. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think in reality, the National Park Service does a pretty good job at education, and I think they're probably positioned the absolute most for it because a lot of times you have to go through them to get the permit, or you have to go through them to get access in some way. And so I do think they hold the most power because if this is like a one-off trip, you're going to come into Zion, you're going to do a day in Zion, and you're going to leave. That's not something you're like watching a ton of footage about how to do it beforehand, or you know what I mean. And so I think in reality, you have to kind of strike when they're not like when the iron's hot, right? When they're the most there. And I will say this: I think in general, people are way more conscious than they've ever been, actually. But for some of us that have maybe been out doing this a long time, and we hit a trail and we see some trash or something like that, it's like we may be like, oh, we'll get bothered by it, let's say. But the reality is, like, percentage wise, like that trail is seeing 5 times as much traffic, and it probably has the same amount of trash as it did before. You know what I mean? Like, and so in some ways, I think people are becoming more green and conscious and aware. But the amount of traffic is what, like, it's so much higher now. I mean, Zion, everyone that's local around here just calls Zion a zoo now. Like, you're going to the zoo. You know what I mean? Because there's so much traffic compared to what it used to be, that it's really tough. And it's pushed a lot of the locals to go and do other backcountry trails that are in the greater Zion area. And there's wins from that. It's really cool, but it's really hard to like be too harsh on what's happening because at the same time we're just seeing so much more traffic. And I think the National Park Service does a pretty good job of doing it. But it's tough. It's public land. Like, everyone has access to it, and everyone has to be aware. Now, I think there are. I mean, doesn't matter how many signs you put at the top of the Grand Canyon of showing people puking. There's still going to be people that drop into that canyon totally unprepared with no water. Or you go to Angel's Landing, there's still going to be people goofing off on a cliff that's 2,000 feet in the air, right? Like, you can't always, like, but there's usually good signage. There's usually things that they're doing that should give people the ability to pay attention and be aware of it. But yeah, I think all in all, though, we're just seeing a massive movement to move outside, and I think at least in national parks, we have the ability to use the National Park Service to try to do a lot of that education. When they're more serial backpackers, that's where I do feel like there's some responsibility for people like us to be trying to push the envelope and make people safe and make people take care of the land that they're walking on and things like that. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think just the leave no trace narrative is something that I think it's just so important. I mean, it really is. Not just for leaving areas pristine, but just like keeping people safe. Like, plan ahead and prepare. Like, you don't have to really know anything about what you're doing or where you're going, but if you know, like, that there's this important tenet to, okay, plan ahead and prepare, like, then you can at least even be like, well, what's the weather going to be like today? Like, oh, it's going to be 90 degrees. Like, maybe I should bring some water. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to know if you had one outdoors experience that was either like, the scariest moment you've had in the outdoors, or one that just stuck with you the most, through all the years for one reason or the other. What would that be?
That's a good question. I would probably say one that stuck with me the most, and it's usually the first one that just comes back to my mind, would be a trip where we had 4 of us, started with 5 actually. 5 of us were starting to do a trip on the Uinta Highline Trail, which is about 110, I want to say. Maybe it's a little less than that. It's a little over 100 miles, though. A trail that goes right through the middle of the Uintas. It's a really remote trail. You cross one dirt road in 100 miles, and it's an incredible area, right? We're doing that in the middle of August, so right around like August 15th, and we get to kind of the highest point on the route, and we get a massive amount of snow comes in and dumps on us, right? This is August. And so, we're getting hailed out. Like, so we get snowed on the first night and we're crossing this big basin trying to get up through this pass. And it just keeps snowing. And it's hailing on us. It's like bruising us. It's a really intense storm. And so then we ended up dropping down. We found an area where we could get our tents pitched, and we spent the night there wondering if we were going to be able to finish this trail. And we ended up just not being safe for us to continue. We're in shorts, we're in trail runners, we're going on a trail where there's some really dicey passes on really narrow trails. There's one in particular called Dead Horse Pass it's about as wide as a goat trail. It's a trail that clearly the animals created and humans adopted, type of trail. And so, we ended up having to pull the plug on that. But I think what was really telling on that is by the time that we got our camp set that night, we were all like borderline hypothermic. Like, it was so cold, and we're running in summer gear and so on and so forth. But having the confidence in the tent to weather that storm, having the confidence in the sleep system to warm up, to dry out clothes throughout the night, all those kinds of things, it was really one of those examples of like just how much confidence, say, I had developed in our own gear to be, we were still about 13 miles, I want to say, maybe it was 12 miles from the nearest trailhead. That trailhead was in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. And so, like, you're really remote, and you really have to rely on your own gear, your own product. And thankfully for us, like, we were able to sleep warm all night and dry things out and get out of there really safely. And, thanks to even things like Garmin and Reach communicators, we were able to get a ride, to go and meet us at the trailhead that we were going to have to bail out on, and so on and so forth. But that was a really interesting experience, because it really, to me, at that point in time, just kind of showed just how far even my own backpacking skill and knowledge had come, or our own gear and products had come. Because we're hiking 100 miles. We're hiking with about 12-pound base weight packs, and that's all that's between you and hypothermia, or all, but at the same time, you can have complete confidence in that gear and in that scenario. So, and that's the threshold that, like, for us, we feel like our gear has to be able to perform in, right? And so, really good firsthand experience and really good testing opportunities, but also just really cool to be able to document that and show that to customers to help them, understand what's possible, and that they can have a lot of confidence in ultralight gear.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, definitely. And I'll tack a PSA onto the end of that, which is always test your gear before you're going out with it for the first time, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where, like, oh man, like, wild weather is coming in. Let me just take, the rubber bands off the tent pole and, get everything sorted out for the very first time. So, like, whenever I get a new tent, I always pitch it like within that first week, so I know exactly how to operate it and get it set up. So
totally, yeah. I mean, even like what you said earlier about tents, how you, like, your confidence is in a certain tent. Like, for me, I've become a really big trekking pole tent advocate. I mean, obviously the weight savings and stuff like that, and the way that we built ours as well, with just the amount of extra guy lines and things like that. But, like, I've spent a lot of nights in that tent right now. I mean, over the course of prototyping and using it, I mean, probably over 100 nights pretty easily in that tent. And so I have a tremendous amount of confidence in that tent. And I think that says it all. Like, no one just picks up a tent, I think, and takes it out in the mountains and can have a tremendous amount of confidence in it. You got to set it in your backyard. You got to set it, put it in multiple, I've been able to pitch that in, every type of climate and atmosphere. And so, like, all of that builds into that confidence, that wisdom. And so, yeah, I mean, you've got to take your gear out. You've got to test it. You've got to do shakeout trips and stuff like that before you get to a position where you're taking that far into, say, the backcountry or into Alaska or something.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. Again, Tayson, really appreciate your time and chatting with me. We'll drop some links to some different Outdoor Vitals products. People can check it out. Is there anything else that you wanna plug before we stop recording?
Yeah, no. I mean, if you want to follow along with some of the documentaries and things we do, you can find us on YouTube. Just search Outdoor Vitals, or even search my name, Tayson Whittaker, and you'll find some channels that we run there. But yeah, I mean, jump over to the website. Like I say, we're a direct-to-consumer brand, so the big thing with that is that we're able to cut those extra margins that REI and other retailers put into the product of the pricing, and we exclusively sell that way. So you'll only be able to find us really on our website. But what that does for you is it gives you a higher quality product, and we're able to just cut out some of that extra margin. So if you're new to backpacking, or if you've been in backpacking a long time, come check out some of the products that I think you'll likely see something that's of interest. And we're always trying to innovate, so you may just see something that you haven't seen before.